Imagine closing your eyes one night and opening them again 19 years later. The world you knew is gone. The people you loved have grown older or disappeared. Your favorite songs, your friends, your childhood, all replaced by screens, machines, and voices that sound almost human. This isn't science fiction. This actually happened to a man who slipped into a coma in 1984 and woke up in a future he couldn't recognize. His first words, "Where's my mother?" This is his unbelievable story. It was an ordinary Friday night in 1984, the kind of night that quietly hides tragedy behind the hum of city lights. The rain had just begun to fall, slow at first, tapping gently against the windshield of a worn-out blue sedan. Inside, Michael Anders, a 25-year-old electrician from Chicago, was driving home after a late shift. The radio played a soft love song, slightly distorted through the old speakers, and his coffee cup rattled in the holder with every bump in the road. But there was something different about that night. A heaviness in the air, like time itself was holding its breath. Michael's eyes were tired. He had worked 16 hours straight. His mother's birthday was tomorrow, and he hadn't called her yet. He promised he would, after dinner, after sleep, after just making it home. The street was empty. Streetlights flickered yellow in the rain, and then out of nowhere headlights appeared from the opposite lane. Blinding, fast, unstoppable. Crash! The sound shattered the silence. Metal twisted like paper. Glass exploded across the wet asphalt. The radio went dead mid-song. In that one instant, everything stopped except the clock on Michael's dashboard. It froze at 11:47 p.m. Paramedics arrived within minutes, sirens echoing through the soaked streets. They found him unconscious, pulse faint, body crushed between metal. But somehow, he was still breathing. Doctors would later call it a miracle of survival, and the beginning of a miracle no one could explain. Michael was rushed to the nearest hospital. Machines beeped, lights flashed, and voices blurred into static. His mother arrived within the hour, eyes swollen, whispering prayers he couldn't hear. The doctors said he might never wake up. Severe head trauma, they said. If he survives, he may never be the same. Outside, the rain kept falling. Hours turned into days, days into years. And as the world moved on, music changed. Buildings rose. Phones lost their wires. Michael stayed frozen in that night. The night everything changed. For most people, 19 years is a lifetime. Children are born, grow, graduate, fall in love. But for Michael Anders, 19 years passed in complete darkness. A world without sound, without light, without time. He lay motionless in a narrow hospital room on the second floor of St. Mary's Medical Center. Machines hummed around him like mechanical lullabies. Every morning, the nurses changed the sheets, checked the monitors, whispered his name. They called him the sleeping man. Outside those walls, the world was changing faster than anyone could have imagined. The Berlin Wall would fall. The internet would be born. People would start carrying phones in their pockets. But inside that quiet room, the clock never moved past the same tick, the same slow inhale, the same faint heartbeat that refused to stop. His mother visited every day for the first few years, bringing his favorite flowers, fresh coffee for the nurses, and a hope she refused to bury. She'd talk to him about the weather, about the neighbors, about a world he could no longer see. Then one day, her chair was empty. The nurses placed her photo on the table beside his bed, facing him, just in case he ever opened his eyes. As the years slipped by, the world outside forgot him. His friends moved away. The city's skyline changed. Television became digital. Voice is turned synthetic. But deep inside Michael's brain, faint sparks still flickered. Tiny storms of memory trapped between sleep and reality. Doctors called it persistent vegetative state. Yet sometimes, his eyelids trembled when someone said his name. A nurse once swore she saw a tear roll down his cheek. But no one believed her. The seasons changed again and again. Snow melted into rain. Rain into sunlight. The same view through the window repeated for 19 years. And then, one ordinary morning in 2003, something extraordinary happened. The heartbeat monitor beeped faster. His fingers moved. His breathing changed. After 19 years of silence, Michael Anders took a breath and opened his eyes. March 17, 2003. It began like any other day at St. Mary's Medical Center. The same corridors, the same fluorescent hum, the same morning routine. Nurse Evelyn had tended to Michael Anders for almost a decade. To her, he was family, the quiet presence she spoke to when no one listened back. That morning, something felt off. The air in the room was unusually still. The machines beeped their steady rhythm. But there was a flicker in Michael's fingertips, a faint, almost invisible twitch. Evelyn froze. She leaned closer, whispering, "Michael, can you hear me?" For 19 years, that name had echoed unanswered. But this time, his eyelids moved. Once, then again. The monitor spiked. The steady beep-beep quickened. Another nurse rushed in. A doctor followed, disbelief carved into his face. They had seen false alarms before, involuntary muscle movements, brief neural sparks. But this was different. Slowly, painfully, Michael's eyes opened. Not a flutter, a deliberate, human motion. The sterile white light of the hospital ceiling poured into pupils that hadn't seen the world since. Ronald Reagan was president. "Michael, can you hear me?" The doctor asked again, voice trembling between science and prayer. A pause, a rasp of air through parched lips. And then, his first whisper in 19 years, fragile but unmistakable. "Where's my mother?" The room went silent. No one moved. The only sound was the quiet hum of machines trying to comprehend the impossible. When they told him the year was 2003, he blinked, as if it were a bad dream. The world he remembered was gone. He asked for his cassette player. They handed him a smartphone instead. He stared at it, confused. "Where are the buttons?" he asked. Outside the window, cars moved faster. People held glowing screens, and a skyline he didn't recognize stretched beyond the horizon. For Michael, it wasn't just waking up. It was being reborn into a future he never lived through. The first thing Michael remembered was pain, not physical, but the ache of realizing the world had gone on without him. Every sound, every color, every face was new, and yet hauntingly familiar. He could barely lift his arms. 19 years of stillness had left his muscles fragile, his body foreign. Nurse Evelyn would place a spoon in his hand, guiding him like a child. "One more step today, Michael," she'd whisper every morning. In the rehab ward, he learned to walk again, one trembling movement at a time. The first day he took 3 steps, the hospital clapped. He smiled, not because he was proud, but because, for the first time in 19 years, people looked at him as if he was alive again. But the real challenge wasn't walking. It was catching up with time. When he closed his eyes in 1984, his world was analog. Phones had cords. Music lived on cassettes. News came from paper. Now, everything glowed. Screens replaced faces. Voices came from machines. He once asked a nurse, "Who's that man talking inside your phone?" She laughed gently, showing him her smartphone. "That's Siri, Michael." His face softened. "People really talk to machines now." She nodded. He looked out the window, where a billboard flashed, "AI is the future." He whispered, "I guess I slept too long." One afternoon, Evelyn handed him a box of old photos, faded, fragile memories from a world that no longer existed. He stopped at one picture, his mother, standing in their kitchen, smiling beside a birthday cake. He traced the edges of her face with shaking fingers. She used to hum when it rained. He said quietly. Tears welled in Evelyn's eyes. "She waited for you, Michael, every day." He looked up, eyes distant, and said, "Then I'll live for her now." Outside, spring sunlight filled the room. A butterfly brushed the window pane. For the first time in nearly 2 decades, Michael Anders felt alive. A year had passed since the day Michael Anders opened his eyes. He no longer lived in the hospital. The world outside had slowly become his classroom. Every morning, he'd walk to the park down the street, moving slower than everyone else, but watching everything more closely. The birds, the children, the strangers scrolling through glowing screens. All of it fascinated him. Sometimes he'd stop to help someone pick up their groceries, or smile at a passerby who looked too busy to notice the morning sun. Because to Michael, every second now mattered. He once said in an interview, "When you lose 19 years, you learn that time isn't money, it's mercy." His body still carried the scars, but his spirit had healed. He enrolled in a local adult learning program, wanting to understand this new digital world. He learned about the internet, email, smartphones, things that once sounded like science fiction. He'd laugh softly and say, "Back then, we thought flying cars would come first." At night, he'd write in a small leather journal his thoughts, his memories, his gratitude. Page after page, he filled it with letters addressed to his mother, though she would never read them. On the first anniversary of his awakening, he placed that journal beneath a tree in the park and whispered, "For all the days I missed, I'm still here." As the sun dipped behind the skyline, light fell across his face, older, wiser, alive. People hurried past him, rushing to somewhere, chasing minutes. Michael simply sat still, smiling. In that moment, he understood something the rest of the world had forgotten. Technology moves forward. Life moves faster. But the heart still beats 1 second at a time. He looked up at the sky, the same sky he hadn't seen since 1984, and breathed out softly. Thank you for giving me back time.